with regard to this program today. The focus is on leadership, and we'll now move from where we started earlier when many organizations were talking about customer experience. Now it's about employee experience, using the same capabilities like the customer journey mapping, driving it back into the organization in order to come up with what we'll define as employee journey mapping. And that is what will now bring about that experiential development in staff towards being leaders, and leaders who will drive digital strategy within an organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that very comprehensive introduction. And gentlemen, welcome once more. And everybody on the panel, for those who have just joined, they can see the numbers are just growing, are quite growing, and we really appreciate you. We are handling the aspect of the topic of the role of leadership in a digitized world. And I'll start off by asking a few questions. I know the gentlemen will have a couple of aspects to address as we go along. And as we said earlier, feel free to pass your comments or questions using the Q&A or chat just below there for those who are on the Zoom call. And for those who might be on YouTube, please do so. I believe we have one of our colleagues who shall pass the same sentiments across to us on this side. Probably just to come to Harrison, do you think with or without COVID, digital transformation was and is a significant factor for organizations? And if whatever answer that you have, why do you think it is so?
My firm belief is that digital transformation was a given, and it was just a matter of time that it will be catalyzed faster than it was already happening. If we look in the last couple of years, probably looking at the last decade since the year 2000, we've had a rapid escalation of different technologies that have come to the fore. What's unique around those new technologies is the speed at which they have been accepted by society and have transformed the way we live, the way we do business, the way we relate even. And some of these aspects we have in every use, something that each of us probably in this conversation has used this morning, like social media. So it is my firm belief that COVID has catalyzed what was already happening. And it is indeed a significant aspect of how we should view life, especially when it comes to leadership. Leadership is a relational item whereby the leader is engaging with the follower, if you call it that way. But this has become a multidimensional space where you're interacting with various stakeholders, again, through aspects of technology that have been enabled in this day and age. We talk in many circles about the fourth industrial revolution. It is characterized by digital, biological, and physical worlds all intertwined through use of the latest technology. A couple of decades ago, we would not have talked about things like artificial intelligence. But right now, we're talking about gathering data so that an artificial intelligence engine can actually help in defining even healthcare solutions, even the cure for the pandemic that we're currently facing, and interpreting that with very many new technologies that are enabling the capacity that is required to drive this very revolutionary change from things like cloud computing, robotics, and the Internet of Things. So when you think of it, COVID has just brought what was happening beneath the surface, if you call it that way, into the fore, and therefore has challenged all of us in leadership positions on how are we using technology. Are we using technology as a hygiene tool, or is it that technology is in our day-to-day way of how we are leading in the various circles that we're leading? That's what I would say, Isaiah.
Thank you, Harrison. And looks like the acceleration is quite on a fast pace. Because as you're saying again, some of these things have been there. But COVID has indeed pushed organizations to move faster has pushed organizations to adopt some of the platforms that they could have not previously just used. Some of them they thought probably they were casual or informal, but right now they have become the way of life. And probably before we move to out of that, I know, Harrison, you have been in the IT sector for quite some time. Could you kindly mention some of the platforms that have become common, especially to aid in digital transformation, so to say?
From a broad spectrum in terms of IT technologies, some of the key technology platforms or technologies and resulted in acceleration of digitization include aspects that I had just previously mentioned, like cloud computing. One of the major hindrances in the 90s around organizations adopting technology rapidly was the total cost of ownership of these inherent technologies. You would have wished to automate a certain area of a process, a business process, but the amount of money that would be required would be into the millions of shillings. Nowadays, that can be done on a click of a button using cloud computing and assigning these resources wherever they are sitting in the world to automate a business process that is sitting within your business, and therefore achieving what would have been done in probably years in a matter of hours and a few clicks. So cloud computing has really changed the way that we have transformed leadership within the organization in terms of actualization of various business processes through automation. Cloud computing being something that currently may be considered outdated by our centennials because it is now a very common thing. We have newer technologies like, for example, 3D printing that are even being used in the field of healthcare, for example, to aid in the manufacture, the speedy manufacturer of various elements, surgical tools, etc., that are used even in the medical surgery and other such processes that are associated. So I would say there's a broad spectrum of technologies, but all of these have one thing in common, that they have the ability to quickly ingest data, be able to process that data and give an output that is relevant to a business process or to a task or to communication that is required to happen in a very efficient manner. So those are some of the technologies that I can speak about in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Harrison, for that. Just moving on to Thomas. Digitization, as far as organizations are concerned, do you think it's a threat? And if indeed it could be seen as a threat, in what perspective? And how do we then need to tackle it? If at all, it can also be viewed as a threat.
Basically, a threat dwells on where there are weaknesses. And if you look at digitization, it is and positives than threats. One area that will pose threats to digitization is the issue around cybersecurity. If you look at what we are having now, is that technology has now rolled over and is now available from an everywhere, anywhere capability in a form whereby from a minor to an adult, they have access to technology and they can access any information. So when it comes to cybersecurity, it boils around what frameworks have organizations put in place. You have issues around data security. We have the issue of data governance, and that is what is required to ensure that their threats are minimized. In terms of when it comes to people, there is the issue of, have we prepared the people towards digital world? So in terms of within the employees or staff in an organization, how have you equipped them so that they are digital ready? Are they available to use technologies such as data analytics? Are they able to have knowledge on how to do mining of data? So it all comes in when the staff within an organization are not yet ready for digital, then digital becomes a threat to them. if it comes to the customer, if we've not done the customer journey mappings properly to the point whereby our staff, the customers are able to use the technology seamlessly without any interruption, or convenience to their way of, not a push method, it's more of a pull where the customer is actually experiencing a pull approach towards the use of technology, but not a push. So once it becomes a pull, there's no threat, but it becomes a threat when you are pushing the technology to the customer and they're not able to have that experience that they deserve, or the value, deriving the value from that technology.
I think just to add to what has just been asked in relation to the whole aspect of digitization being a threat, I would definitely concur with Thomas has mentioned that digitization will be a threat if it's not accepted, if it's not integrated into the business strategy, and if it's not properly executed. And some of the elements of proper execution include looking at the governance of the digitization platforms, looking at aspects such as the cybersecurity aspect. But there is an inherent fear of today's organization in terms of obsolescence. And that can only come in if there is no proper thought into the business strategy towards delivering or enhancing the business processes within the organization to face the digital world. And that becomes the burden of today's leader. And then you also have definitely the context of putting the customer, both internal and external, into the context of the rapid digitization that is happening within and outside the organization. And that means that leaders have to drive building a digital culture within organizations properly. And that involves a lot of change management, capacity building, upskilling, in order to make both the internal customer, the employee, to accept and be more productive using the new digital tools, and also to harness the optimization to deliver a superior customer experience. That's driving things like loyalty, customer service through the aspects of how digitization has been integrated into service delivery offering of the institution. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Harrison. Speaking about, thanks, Thomas, as well. Speaking about employee upscaling, to what extent do you think the role of skilling employees is the burden of leadership? To what extent, or to what extent should leadership be involved in terms of upskilling? Because some of the platforms and some of the issues, aspects you basically mentioned, some of them have been there, some of them are there, and to what extent? Let's maybe, Thomas, you could go into that element of to what extent then organization leadership can take in terms of upskilling the employees.
When you talk about leadership, it's about creating a vision, not only for the organization, but also for the staff. So we have to now start looking at in terms of what are the competencies that are required within the organization. And that upskilling comes around one, you have to now start seeing, do we have the right processes in place, and do we have the right people to run those processes? So the first level is having to do a skills review in terms of what competencies do you have within the organization. The next level is, how do you close that gap? There will be various capabilities. One, you can decide to now train the staff within. And when it comes to training, training is not necessarily about classroom training. You can bring about coaching from within the organization, and also you can have e-learning capabilities, which are cost effective. Then you can now go to the actual classroom training. Now we've seen with the new COVID environment, e-learning has become the main method of gaining more knowledge. The other area is, how do you partner with strategic partners to bring in that skill into the organization? And for example, I can say with what we do with the SMART, we are able to partner with SMART and they are able to give us the right skill sets in order to run projects to deliver the right results. So in that way, our staff get to acquire new skills and knowledge when they run projects together with strategic partners. The next thing level is how, if you don't get that level of experience, how do you bring in new talent within the organization? Various forms of bringing in new talent into the organization involves, can you also work with internships where you have new young college students, you bring them in for internships, and also even you can bring short-term contracting, and at the same time, you can decide to have the long-term contracting through hires. So you can see, you have various tools and frameworks in which as a leader you can use in order to build the necessary skill sets that are required to be used within an organization in order to drive forward the digital strategy.
Thank you, Thomas. I think that really you've nailed it. And we can see now the role, we can see how staff, how various stakeholders come in as far as upskilling is concerned. Maybe just to go back to Harrison, when we mentioned about digitization as a risk, and we're talking about cloud computing and, you know, working from the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the risks obviously is about data security. And as a leader in this industry, as a leader in this sector, in this space of healthcare, for instance, what advice could you give in terms of the leaders taking data security as a matter of importance within the organization, especially during this time of COVID?
Thank you very much for that question, Isaiah. My firm conviction is that every leader needs to understand what data security is all about. Data security in this day and age is no longer something that can be relegated to the manager to sit in a corner and be able to spearhead for the organization. Data security should start from the top, all the way from the board to management and to each and every person, because the aspect of security is actually driven by the human resource, by the people within the organization. Data security has a paramount evidence for every leader in terms of integrating and understanding the data security element that is to be part of each business process that is being digitized, how to incorporate governance and the policies within each of these processes, and then how to understand those policies within the organization and to lead to and enforcing these aspects. And then it may look very simple, like, for example, things to do with who has access to which data, the strength of passwords, and it can go to as complex as the legalese in understanding the data protection laws within each of the countries that an entity is operating in. And you've seen the, for example, in the data protection law, like in Uganda and even in Europe, where we have GDPR, for example, which has various ramifications, if not adhere from a security perspective. So data security should be given a central focus by each organization, and across the board given a human-centered element in the aspect of integrating the policies, going beyond IT elements of just the things like files, etc., to the understanding of the implications and the policies and processes that have been put in place to protect data within the organization. Healthcare is even a sensitive aspect. For example, in our organization, we do have a very key focus as we work as a healthcare automation entity around the security of the data that we handle, and understanding for each and every person what their role has in terms of implication to the data security aspect of business and in the service that we deliver to our customers. So within that, we integrate the latest technologies. We do the various assessments that require to periodically monitor, measure, and evaluate, and to continuously continue to fortify data security elements across our organization. Back to you, Isaiah.
Thank you, Harrison, for addressing that very, very sensitive area as far as security is concerned, because it's not an issue for one organization, it's across the board, especially now that with the pandemic, people are using, sometimes some of them have to use their own devices. They are in environments that are not corporate environments as before. They are subject to vulnerabilities in terms of as far as data is concerned. Thank you for addressing that element. Just to come to Thomas, and I can just pick one of the questions that has been thrown on the platform in terms of somebody needs you to expound further on the reduction of cost in relation to quality of service. The person is claiming or is saying that we are losing quality on this one. So organizations are moving forward, leaders are moving forward, pushing in terms of cost reduction, but quality is the one that is being sacrificed as far as cost reduction. Quality is affected. People are pushing for cost reduction, but quality is affected. As you also answered that question, I would request you to just mention about how significant is customer experience in this digitization agenda for organizations. Sorry, Thomas, you might need to unmute, please. Unmute, please.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Apologies for that. The concept of reducing cost while enhancing quality comes from the concept where quality is measured by the customer. So you may deliver something of a service or good, but it does not meet the quality that the customer wants. So in reducing waste, that is when enhancing, reducing cost, we are not looking at cutting down the quality element. We are looking at enhancing more quality features without compromising on what the customer needs. So it starts from the first phase, meeting the customer expectation, getting what the customer wants, what the customer needs, delivering exactly what the customer wants in the cost-effective way. So the cost-effective measures come in that if the customer wants it within a specific time, you have it on that defined time, and you have what is called just in time. That reduces the cost of inventory. You have things to do in the production process where services take longer in terms of they have to go through very many stages in processing. How can you reduce those stages in processing so that the customer cannot, the good becomes cheaper, but the quality is not compromised? You have other issues to do with waiting time, or we have what is called motion. If you have a lot of motion where the production channel has a lot of motion, goods are moving from one end to another and returning back before they get to their customer, those are where the wastages are, and they increase the cost. So quality, you look at when you're defining when you have a service, if it comes to service, you have to do the right customer journey mapping, giving the customer, you have what is at the value capabilities, what is value to the customer. Each stage of the journey map, the customer is gaining a value. And that's when you'll find that the cost of delivering that service is lower than when you are just producing based on internal perspectives and you're not meeting the customer expectations. When it comes to customer experience, as again we say, the key mantra is the journey mapping. how do you define that journey map? Again, when it comes to the customers, have you defined the customer personas? You may have a service or good which meets a specific persona, and you are using it to derive it for everyone. So you don't use one size fit all approach. You have segmented your persona, your customers, and you've known what are their personas, and against each persona, you are delivering what is right for that persona. So the element, the key takeaway there is avoid one size fit all approach.
Thank you, Thomas. I think that really explains how definitely organizations can save on cost, whereas at the same time, they are not compromising on quality. And I think, Thomas, maybe at some point, not maybe today, there's a lot that you are really mentioning alongside the, or in regards to customer journeys, so that we can add value. I want to believe that Wendy Casale, that question has been addressed as far as cost reduction is concerned from Thomas. If there is any query again, you might just pop up your question. But essentially, thank you, Thomas, for answering that question. Now, back to once more, Thomas, just in terms of digitization is being seen as an opportunity, either way. And organizations might be, definitely some of them, leveraging on digitization to either grow their profitability or address customer aspects or meet or exceed the customer expectations. Would you kindly talk more about digitization being an opportunity?
The opportunity comes to an organization if under different layers. One, you have the rights having a digital ready employee workforce. That digital ready employee workforce will be able to interact and work with the customers in order to deliver that value that is required by the customer. The other area is in terms of products. You'll be able to create products that derive a good experience for the customer, and it's able to give convenience in terms of how do convenience to the customers. Because if you look at the modern customer, is looking for convenience and availability. So how have you put in digitization in order to provide convenience and availability and choice? Because as it is now, any customer today, if you want to buy an item, the first thing they do is that they move to the digital social media and try to compare what you've given against what is available in the rest of the world. So the issue of convenience, availability, and choice are the key pillars in order to drive your digital strategy to ensure that customers are able to have that experience, that choice, and they are able to get it. Because the moment one customer, if you don't have what the customer wants, you'll get it from another provider. In terms of bringing value to the shareholders that is within the company, if you look at the digital capabilities, they bring an efficient cost structure within the organization, and with a great brand. Where if you look at a company that has absorbed digital capability, the brand becomes strong, its sales will grow, and with high sales and reduced cost, the profitability increases. And if you can see the exponential growth in profitability from companies that have embraced technology or digital versus those who have not, you'll find that the ones that have digital, their profits are growing at an exponential rate. Some which have said they can grow 3 times than those that have not embraced digitization. To the economy, we now find that if you look at even the government, it has now embraced technology. Now, as a country, we are able to access government services from anywhere without having to go through the long queues. Previously, to get a government service, let's use a simple concept, to get a certificate of good conduct. to get a certificate of good conduct, one had to wake up very early in the morning and go queue at Kiambu Road at the DCI. Nowadays, you do it from your comfort and you are able to even get the appointment on when to go pick your fingerprints. So these are the things that you'll find as an economy, a lot of time has been saved. And now people can engage in real productive work that can grow the economy of this country. If you look at the same to the country, digitization has created many jobs. If you look at the introduction of Safaricom, which has digitized the way we do communication and the way we do our businesses through payments infrastructure, if you look at the people who rely on Safaricom ecosystem, the number of shops and outlets that have been opened in this country, if you look at the number of shops and outlets that are used to do mobile repairs, selling phones, and now we even have now the concept of even doing like now government services moving to the common wananchi. That shows how digitization can be used to grow not only the government, the private sector, but also the government in how it does business to serve the citizenry of this country.
Thank you, Thomas, for putting it out very clearly. Because indeed, if organizations do not digitize, then they risk being phased out. And thank you for addressing that in detail, Thomas. Just whereas we are on that, I know leadership is about vision, is about providing direction. Leadership is about championing, being the head. But then again, as you outline the vision, as you outline direction as a leader, there's something that we call culture in an organization. And there's a saying that goes that actually culture is it strategy for breakfast or is it for dinner? Harrison, kindly, could you mention something in that regard? How do we align then culture within the organization to address or for us to achieve effective digitization?
Thank you very much, Isaiah. Definitely, it is true that culture is strategy for breakfast, because just as is painted that the iceberg is bigger underneath the water than it is above the water. The culture of the organization is what is unseen, but what is the practice within that organization. The burden of the leader in today's organization is to transform the culture, and it is easier for organizations that have been young in their years than older organizations that may have years of traditional practice that have been inculcated into how they do this. Who are more agile and flexible in adapting their culture to the new environment. However, with the right conversations in the relationships within a business and to look at the wins that can be adopted through digital transformation. So how does leadership manage this? Leadership then is in charge of the change management process of bringing home the various technologies and transformations that need to be inculcated into the business processes, to the point of understanding as to why it is necessary, and not only necessary, but of advantage to the person whom it is affected. And once this is personalized to the organization and each and every employee within that organization, then the culture can be transformed to have digital as part of its culture rather than an enemy of the existing culture. And that means bringing together new thinking. And like what Thomas was able to mention in part of this conversation, what are of bringing in the new thinking and be consolidating the internal talent within having high to understand the digital transformation positively, as well as upskilling and training employees on the various technologies that are there that they need to adapt to use in order for the organization to become adaptive to the digital transformation that is taking place. So in my view, the impact of culture is very significant on the pace at which a digital transformation occurs within an organization and the extent of which the success is seen through that digital transformation is highly dependent on the quick adoption of the culture of the organization to fit with the new way of doing things.
Harrison, thank you. I think the network was breaking at some point, but I'm sure you could probably change a little bit. But thank you for the insights you've given as far as culture is concerned and how leaders need then to align with respective stakeholders in the market for us to achieve the expectation. Probably back to Thomas. What is that one key factor as far as you're concerned, Thomas, that leadership need to consider for easier or for effective digital transformation?
One key thing I can pick as a leader is about collaboration. And the collaboration is both across the organization and downwards with the employees. And when you bring about a collaboration, you are able to create insights, because we've seen situations where there's a lot of top-down approach towards digitization, but there's also a need to now embrace that the younger employees who are, or the new entrants, or the people who are at the ground within the organization, they are more tech savvy than the person who's been in the organization for 20 or so years. So the collaboration framework is, how can we harness that new ideas, and how can we bring the concept of design thinking towards how we do things within the organizations. And that involves, as I had said, the concept of creating insights, experimentation, whereby we do not use the rule of thumb to do things, but how can we create experimentation within the organization where we test capabilities, and if they are successful, it becomes the way for the next few sessions of the organization before the next bright idea comes in. So the concept of collaboration, ideation, and experimentation, and all this is what we now call design thinking. If that is brought in within an organization, we'll see innovation, and that's where the person who is driving leadership is supposed to be providing within the organization.
Thank you, Thomas, for bringing out that very clearly. And indeed, these factors play a key role for effective digital transformation. I'm seeing my time is just running out, but a couple of few questions to the panelists, and I can see some are coming through. You could kindly continue filling in the question that you have from your side. Definitely, we'll try our best to answer them. I can see somebody saying that true digitization is about efficiency in service delivering and reducing time to market for products. And thank you, Harrison and Thomas. Back to Harrison, just these days with digitization and with the COVID pandemic that we have, with the COVID pandemic that we have, and people not probably working from office, and leaders not being able to physically see the rest of the staff, and people are using digital platforms to either report or to deliver on the expectations. And traditionally, it was that leaders could see people seated and could see them doing work, and could answer, question them, call them to their offices. But this is no longer the case. So there could be some fear for some leaders in terms of how effective this is, as far as productivity is concerned. As custodians of the resources, Harrison, from your side, how does leadership minimize this perception or this issue or this aspect of or fear that the staff, the resources could not be doing what they are doing? What strategies could leadership deploy? Harrison, are you there?
Yes, I am. And can you hear me clearly now?
I'm hearing you now.
To answer your question, Isaiah, today's leadership calls for truly moving ahead into what I call e-leadership, being able to have a digital mindset in leadership. And that means that we need to move away from the aspect of management. And whilst it is known within management principles that management by walking around and the tradition, it calls for this leader to have rapport and relation with, be able to influence, guide, and transform their thinking.
Breaking again. You're breaking again. Maybe as you might be changing the network. Maybe Thomas, maybe in a sentence or two, as Harrison probably changes, gets to a better network. What do you think? How does leadership change their way of management on resources, human resources, especially with the current challenge?
As we said, culture. If you have the right culture, you'll have people that have the right, because culture will now define the mission and vision. So if the entire workforce is aligned to that mission and vision, and it is communicated well, it will be clear to each and every personnel what is expected of me. So when it comes to the execution of work, it is quite clear on what I'm supposed to do. So that ensures that each time people will not be being supervised on how to do work, but they will be requiring coaching on how to excel in what they are intended to do towards the vision and mission. So the first point to note is that employees are not there to be managed, but they are there to be coached in order to drive performance. So putting in place coaching frameworks that will ensure that the employees is in the right direction and is clear on what they intended to do. If you look at now the modern employees, the modern employee is not there to earn a living, is more there to understand what is it that I derive from that organization. We saw particularly that when we had Facebook, there were breaches about culture issues. The employees did not want to work for Facebook because of the culture issues. So they want to be aligned towards the vision and mission of the company. So if that is put in place, the rest comes in and fits in properly. Other areas you'll find that when it comes to performance, performance is not about how well you are delivering the activity. Employees now are geared towards what are the outcomes. So if I'm clear on the outcomes and I'm able to be measured on the outcomes and not activities, you'll find the employee does not need to be supervised on a day-to-day. They'll be geared towards the outcomes and they'll be aiming towards being measured on the outcomes, not how the activities are being executed. So that's a major paradigm shift where staff are now focused on how they are aligned to the culture of the organization, how they are aligned to the outcomes of the organization. So that will be quite visible. And if you look at outcome results, you are able to understand where are those outcomes and they can be seen, because outcomes are what people see out there, but the activities are what are performed inside an organization, and people will not be able to see those activities, but they are able to see the outcomes.
Thank you, Thomas, for the elaboration. Indeed, it's about outcomes, not how busy somebody is. It's about the result, the impact, the value they're delivering, and the role of coaching and that change in mindset. I think indeed, as you have put it, it plays a big role as far as monitoring resources is concerned. I don't know whether Harrison can mention, I know he had quite wealthy aspects in that area. I don't know whether he is now able to mention one or two things. I'm seeing our time is running out. As far as
yes, Isaiah, and I hope that this time round I'm more clearer. I'm now changing to the third network that I could access. Can you hear me loud and clear now?
Very good, loud and clear.
Yes, indeed, technology does come with its challenges, and it happens when you are presenting. So pardon me for that. But indeed, yes, what Thomas wanted to actually was out of what I was going to speak about, that people mentioned in terms of outcomes and not necessarily the hours that they put in behind the scene for being there 8 to 5 o'clock. Nowadays, you're having organizations with delivery centers that are across the world. You have people in Kenya delivering for organizations in America. You have people in India.
Harrison.
So means that, hello?
So
can you hear me?
Some words there, I think.
What I was mentioning is that, therefore, it means that for today's leader, they must be able to harness the digital platforms that are available to be able to influence the attitudes and behaviors of their teams in order to start performance amongst those individuals. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to see you to be able to assign a task to you. I can send a task to you via a communications platform, even like WhatsApp today has become a common business tool that is being used. So how can I, as a leader, be able to harness this tool to motivate, influence, and spark productivity in the people that I work with in order to deliver the outcomes that are desired by the organization's customers?
Thank you, Harrison. I think we are coming to the tail end, and sorry for that change of network. I think that's part of the challenges we're receiving. We are getting right now, especially with the work from anywhere. I think that's part of the challenge. Maybe you might consider switching off your video, and maybe audio will just be clear enough. But thank you, Harrison, for that, the sentiments that you've made. Just as we conclude, because of time, thank you very much for those who just joined. I can see the numbers quite grown, and we've been talking about the role of leadership in a digitized world. And you've seen quite a number of things in terms of the digitization acceleration being an opportunity. We have seen threats in that area. You've seen how to address them. You've seen how to address aspects to do with productivity and monitoring the same, culture, and a couple of other things. But just to come to the tail end of this discussion, which I know is a big discussion, we cannot exhaust it in an hour. We cannot even exhaust it in an hour and a half. And therefore, definitely at some time, we might need to revisit this very same topic. But just, Thomas, to come back to you, what could you advise leaders during this time, especially as far as digitization is concerned? What is that one advice, if you had a forum, which of course you have right now, what could you advise their leaders on this platform, of course? What is that one thing you could advise them, having said what you have said, having seen the kind of questions that are coming to the fore?
I think based on even when I look at the questions that have been brought forward and the concerns that have been raised on the questions that have been posted, People are worried about they have legacy systems and how can they reach this journey of digitization. So the first thing is have a digital strategy. And in the digital strategy, prioritization. Rome was not built in one day. And we have to now prioritize what are the things that can deliver value and what can be delivered within the shortest time possible, and what we call the low-lying fruits. So there's no need of going through a big bang approach, just prioritize and have a good change program. The change program has to start from the top, create awareness, build that desire, build that knowledge, and then with all successful programs that have been brought in, how do you reinforce so that people can now start realize that actually whatever we've done it well, and it has started creating outcomes to the organization. So there's no need of panic or rushing to deliver things through bespoke solutions. Just have a strategy plan, have a prioritization matrix, and have a good change program, and you'll be successful.
Thank you, Thomas. That gives us a lot of comfort. For those of us who are still seeing digitization as a threat, I think now we have a tact way out. Thank you for bringing out that very clearly. Because of time, I suppose Harrison could hear me. He could be hearing me. What are your remarks, final remarks? What could you advise captains in the industries as far as digitization is concerned, especially during this period?
My sentiments to the audience and to the leaders is that digitization is here to stay, and it's shaping our organizations, our lives, and in each and every moment, and creating new challenges that we have to face. And therefore, we must, as leaders, set new mechanisms within ourselves and within the people that we lead to be able to onboard digitization and use advance our business processes, our customer positions, and achieve our wider market scope. So the of us as leaders is to have the capability and the drive to integrate the digital transformation in our companies, and within that to inspire employees to embrace change, to put digital transformation with the customer in mind. In other words, to have customer-centered digital transformation, that we are able to harness the full value that digital transformation can indeed empower today's modern organization. So my comment and advice to the leaders is to promote this change and to ensure that you drive this alongside with all stakeholders within our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. Quite insightful. I know there was some breaks a little bit there, but yes, we need as leaders to embrace change. We need to collaborate. We need to have strategy. And thank you. And I can see comments from the participants that this has been a very beneficial, absolutely beneficial. And the presenters have been very much spot on, very knowledgeable, and kudos to the presenters. That's been amazing. Harrison, I think they are saying you have a lot, and I think technology did not favor you this time around. I think we'll definitely need, some people are saying that we need another session on this. So Thomas, we are not out of the hook yet. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to talk about as far as leadership in this highly digitized environment is concerned. So just to mention to the various attendees that came on this webinar that we shall have another forum where we shall delve into the details on some of the aspects we are not able to do, to go into, and also to be more clear, especially where network connectivity let us down. But essentially, we want to appreciate each and every one of you. for coming. I'm sure there are a couple of insights that we have all picked, right from strategy, right from how to collaborate, right from on aspects regarding customer experience, regarding data security, all those aspects. But maybe the last one for Thomas as we leave. I know you've mentioned the last, but essentially, do we, in terms of as far as leadership in healthcare is concerned, do you think we are moving at the pace at which we should be moving? If not, what do you think are the main hindrances? Is it capabilities? Is it capacity? Is it goodwill? Or is it just that leaders are not risking it? If that's what we could call it. Maybe as a final remark, just as we close.
I think in the healthcare, we've seen considerable advances in digitization. And we'll start with, if you see the concept of using virtual technology. Now we are having telemedicine. If you see in the last 4-5 months or so, visits to physical hospitals has reduced. So people are embracing telemedicine. People have now started embracing how to get issues around their health status. So we've seen people using wearables, things to do with they're able to collect data on a real-time basis on where their pulse rate, their temperature, and also their blood sugar levels. So this means that as a society, we have started embracing the healthcare technologies, and the adoption is becoming very fast. And if you see, even of late, when it comes to temperature now, we are now using infrared technology to measure temperatures. Whereas if you look at some years ago, when we were young, our parents were using their thumb, their palm to measure our temperature. And now we moved to thermometers. Now we've moved to infrared technology. So it means that things are moving fast and the adoption is good. And it's now about how to bring synergies around all these so that we can bring down the cost of treatment and the cost of preventive care to the general public.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Sorry, because of time, I can see a couple of questions that have been floated on the question and answer section. Some of them will reach out to you, but as we said, we did not do justice to this discussion, and therefore there'll definitely be a follow-up webinar session on this. Some of the questions definitely we will definitely answer them during that time. Godfrey Shikuku, I can see Celestine, a couple of questions there in terms of culture from Zingo Kitsau, David Kemboi, a couple of questions there as far as COVID pandemic is concerned, and how marketing in rural areas has been affected. Helen Onchari, your question there on how performance of employees be measured and rated. David Kemboi, question on regards to the best method in managing teams apart from Zoom, which we are right now on. Organizational living savings. All those questions. Kevin Otieno, Maurice Ocheng. Thank you very much. As Maurice has said there, Maurice Ocheng, that a very good session, and another session indeed is inevitable. So thank you very much. Thank you, panelists, for coming through. And I know there are some people who even asked for PowerPoint presentation. Because of time, I think we are not able to do that. But yes, we shall have all this addressed in the next time. So thank you. Unless Thomas or Harrison has any other remark, we bring this session to a close. And we want to appreciate everyone that came. Thank you for your time. We indeed collectively want to make our organizations a better place. We want to be more productive. We want to adapt the new technologies. We want to digitize. We want leadership to continue captaining effectively. And so thank you, each and every one of you. This definitely brings us to the closure of this webinar session. Thank you all. You're free to leave at your own pleasure. Thank you.